Let's play the clip and unpack it.
I certainly consider mass shootings a health crisis, and we are doing for the first time real studies to find out what the etiology of that is. And we're looking for the first time at psychiatric drugs. You know, these kind of mass shooting, people have had guns in this country forever.
Since the inception of the country, right? Think about that. Since 1776, Americans have had guns. And so I think it's important to acknowledge that at this point, how are we going to take all the guns away, right? They're out there, people have them. I understand the arguments. I try to look through any complex issue from both perspectives. It's not like Canada. This isn't like Iceland. This isn't like Scandinavian countries where guns have been part of the zeitgeist. Guns have been endemic to the American culture since the inception of this country. 249 years ago, is it? And so I think it's important that we consider that, because just trying to take away all the guns at this point, like, the horse is out of the barn. So I think it's also important that we look at mental health and we look at the psychiatric side of it, which he's about to get into.
When I was a kid, we had shooting clubs at our school. People, kids, my classmates, other people would bring a .22 rifle with their guns to school and park it in the parking lot. Nobody was shooting. So there's never been a time in America, in the history of humanity, and people walked into a crowd, into a church or a movie theater or a school or a crowd of strangers and just started randomly shooting. It's happening in our country. It's not happening around the world. And there are many other countries that have comparable levels of guns that we have in this country. We had comparable levels in the 40s, 50s, and 60s, and people weren't doing that. Something changed, and it dramatically changed human behavior. And one of the culprits we need to examine is whether the fact that we are the most over-medicated nation in the world, and that a lot of those are psychiatric drugs that have black box warnings on them that warn of suicidal and homicidal ideation. So we are doing those studies right now for the first time, and we will have an answer.
I think that's really amazing. This is something that many people in the mental health community, Kelly Brogan, for example, and other folks who have degrees in psychiatry and specialty training have been talking about this for a long time. This sort of manic depersonalized behavior that you see, and this lack of empathy in lack of reaction. You know, when these people are arrested, they show no signs of remorse or guilt or shame. Something is clearly wrong upstairs. And I think it's time that we investigate this. And could there be a situation where individuals who buy weapons, you know, whether it's a handgun or a rifle or a shotgun or even a knife for that matter, should require at minimum a mental health evaluation and an investigation into the prescriptions that these individuals are on? Because as he mentions, you know, far too many of these individuals clearly, when they are arrested or you see photos of them after the fact, have obvious mental health issues. This recent shooter, of course, and then the one in Nashville, and then there was one in Colorado. I think it was in 2023. This guy was in the parking lot of a King Soopers and just went into the store and started shooting people. Evanston, Illinois, you remember in the summer, I want to say it was 2023, this individual was in his apartment and like shot up a fair or something like that in the street. The list goes on. And yeah, I think a lot of people just say, well, it's guns, it's the guns, it's the assault rifles. But if we think about the deadliest mass shooting at a school was the Virginia Tech shooting, I think in the early, it was like 2014 or something. The point being, this individual killed over 30 people with a 9mm handgun, right? This was not an assault rifle or an AK-47 or AR-15. This was a simple handgun. So, if we ban assault rifles, I don't own AR-15 or AK-47 or I have no skin in the game. But if we ban these assault rifles, people, what are they going to do? They're going to use handguns. So then what, we ban handguns, they're going to use shotguns. So if we ban shotguns, they're going to use hammers or knives or cars. I mean, you see this in New York City. You saw this in New Orleans. You've seen this, I think, in the Carolinas, where an individual just drives a car and plows over a bunch of people, right? You see this in Europe as well. You see stabbings in the UK and in France all the time, on the subway, on trains. So crazy people are going to crazy, and they will find a way to do it. So I think it's also important that as we look at stricter gun control measures, that we also concurrently evaluate mental health, nutrition, the unintended harms of psychiatric medications. As RFK, I don't see why this could be a really easy retroactive study to go back and look at all the people that have been, convicted of and arrested for mass shootings and speak to their psychiatrists and their doctors and figure out what medications they were on. I mean, this would be a very simple study to do, and we could get a lot of data from this. And I think it's relevant or apropos to this conversation about health, because if we look at violent crime in inmates that have been incarcerated, several studies have found that people that have been jailed for horrific crimes on average have lower omega-3 fatty acids found in their tissues of their body, causing them to possibly want to engage in more egregious violent behavior. So this has been studied in Australia, I believe, and here in the US as well. Incarcerated inmates generally have suboptimal nutrition status. So we have the psychiatric medication, temporal correlation use, right, that we should be looking at, as well as nutrition. And obviously in this country, we have a major nutrition problem, much more so than any other country in the world. So this seems like a recipe for disaster, for violent crime. In fact, if you look at violent crime in, low-income communities, these are food deserts characterized by lack of access to food, healthy food, a lot of fast food. And I've been on the south side of Chicago. I made the mistake I used to have a storage locker off Cicero and 63rd. If you know Midway, or the Chicago area, greater Chicago area, you know where I'm talking about. And I had to go into the city, and I went through the south side, and I just saw the slums. I saw the projects, and I was very scared. I was like, okay, I'm really in the wrong part of town, but I have to get out of here. And I couldn't help but notice that there was no access to healthy food. It was all convenience stores and fast food restaurants. And so this is where we see a disproportionate increase in violent crime and gun violence. And so I think it's impossible to disentangle the nutrition and psychiatric medication use from the rise in crime. And so that's why I wanted to share this video with you and help you better understand that at least, our own health apparatus is going to be studying this, which I think is quite awesome. So what are your thoughts? Let me know in the comment section below, my friends. If you've ever taken a psychiatric medication, I would love to know how that affected your empathy, how that affected your behavior and impulsivity and beyond. So if you have any experience with this, let me know in the comment section below. As always, I'm grateful that you tuned in. And if you have a different perspective, I would like to hear from you as well. We'll catch you on a future show down the road.